If you're making a truly massive world in Satisfactory, you may know about the lag problems that can come up when you have a lot of items in your world. The item limit is actually about 2.16 million, which sounds like a lot, but it's not hard for the most dedicated players with massive bases to reach that limit. There is also a way to go beyond this limit by changing some game files, which is how big creators like Kibitz have expanded their bases beyond normal means. Today we're going to give you some tips for reducing the number of unneeded items in your world so you don't run into this object limit. What is the object limit? First of all, don't get mad at the team behind Satisfactory. They didn't set this item limit. The Unreal Engine, which Satisfactory is built on, has a built-in limit of 2,162,688 entities. However, you can increase this limit through the engine.ini file in the game config files. But you probably shouldn't unless you're willing to potentially have your game break. The limit exists for a reason, and issues such as flickering foundations and a breaking of hierarchical Z-buffer occlusion have been observed, the latter having to do with larger objects culling or removing smaller objects that are hidden behind the larger object. I reached out to the developers of Satisfactory over at Coffee Stain Studios, and they really wanted me to emphasize that these optimizations surrounding the object limit really only apply if you have a mega base that creators like Kibitz have and have spent countless hours on. To the average player and even most above average players, the rest of this video won't be helpful. The developers behind Satisfactory don't want you to optimize the fun away, and they're working in the background on optimizing the number of objects in the world and how they're handled. Again, don't bother with the things in this video unless you're certain that you need to. Focus on playing and enjoying the game. Technical artist Ben made sure to mention the garbage collection aspect of the Unreal Engine and summed it up neatly. The game needs to keep track of every object to be able to clean up memory. Every 61.0999 seconds, the game throws out the items that it no longer needs. You may notice this hitch in your game if the garbage collection has a lot to do. And going beyond the preset object limit may cause negative side effects related to garbage collection. However, they haven't necessarily tested this claim because the time they could spend testing the stability, they chose to spend on improving the object limit issue so that you don't need to go over the preset limit. So what does and does not affect the object count? The object limit includes players, nodes, buildings, actual items, and more. Some things, like buildings, may include multiple objects in them. When I reached out to the developers, they gave the example of a manufacturer having 7 objects, 4 inputs, 1 output, 1 power connection, and then the building itself. There are a few things in Satisfactory that do not count towards the object limit. For one thing, items stored in containers do not count as objects, as the amount is simply recorded without the object being created. A different process handles items on a conveyor belt, so those won't count either. Belts. Belts are some of the most common items in Satisfactory, and to be efficient with their use, you should run belts all the way to their length limit. This will ensure that you're not wasting any items on half-length belts when you could be using a longer one. While you're working with your belts, you should also be sure to remove belt supports when you can. Once your belts are built, you don't need to keep these supports, so feel free to deconstruct them unless you want to keep them for aesthetic reasons. Unneeded decorations. Most of us enjoy adding some decoration to our factory, but not all of it is needed. Encasing a factory in walls can help with your frame rate because the game doesn't have to render all the belts. But for an outpost factory that you rarely visit, you can help to reduce your item count by leaving the factory open. Use a few pillars to hold up additional floors, otherwise keep it as basic as possible. If you really want your factory to be decorated nicely, then be aware of walls and floors that are hidden. Keep everything hollow so that you're not wasting any items on filling in spaces that you'll never see. Here's a bonus tip for floors. When building columns, make sure you use the maximum thickness of concrete slab rather than stacking multiple short ones on top of each other. Condense your base. The closer your main areas of production are to each other, the less items you might have. You won't need to run belts as far in order to get items from one area to another, if your entire factory is closer together. This can also help reduce the usage of vehicles like trains, which should help the game's performance quite a bit. That's all the tips we have for now. The point of this is less about how to lessen your object count, as you can probably figure out some ways to do this yourself, but more about why you probably don't need to do any of these things in the first place, unless you're this guy.
Hello everyone, I'm Kibitz, and welcome back to Satisfactory.
Make sure to like and subscribe with the notification bell on if you're interested in learning more about Satisfactory, especially with Update 4 coming soon. Thanks for watching.